Hello, hello, and greetings and salutations, my friends. I'm Pat626, and I normally host Subculture Shock. That is Sunday nights on Twitch, and I play a lot of goth, industrial, darkwave, deathrock, EBM, synthpop, and postpunk. And I really want to thank my friends over at EBM Worldwide for setting up the following interview with someone that I have been playing the hell out of for the past few years. But first, I want to tell you about EBM Worldwide, which is a partnership of DJs, fans, promoters, and producers who meet together to support the scene, charity, LGBTQIA+, animal welfare, and other causes. They even have a Discord you can join. You can get more information at facebook.com/EBM Worldwide. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest tonight, Curse Mackey. How's it going?
Going great, Pat. Nice to be here.
Well, it is an absolute treat to have you here because, Oh Blasphemy and After You Destruction are probably like some of my most played club songs.
All right.
So, yeah. And the new album, I have been bragging about the fact that I got to listen to it already, and it's phenomenal. So I'm really looking forward to talking about that tonight, and looking forward to everybody getting to hear it eventually.
Absolutely. Well, cool. I'm glad that you like what you hear, and I'm happy that many people have been gravitating towards it, and that the new album seems to have some anticipation amongst the community. So it's a good place to be at. Oh Blasphemy and After You Destruction. It's funny you mentioned those two. Those are really like the first two songs that I wrote for Instant Exorcism that kind of set the stage for where that album would go. So I'm happy you like those.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely. And so I guess that's a good place to start of getting, we're talking about people really looking forward to your music, but you weren't always a musician. So what I like to start with on the show is what we call the supervillain origin story, which how did you even get into this type of music to begin with? And I don't even mean playing it. How did you start listening to it? What brought you into this scene?
Okay, let me think. I would say it probably went from Sesame Street to Kiss to Van Halen to Black Sabbath to the Sex Pistols into like stuff like Dead Kennedys, and then learning about like more noisy shit like the like OG industrial stuff like Throbbing Gristle and Einsters into Neubauten. And then also there was a record store in San Antonio, Texas called Hog Wild Records. And in high school, we would skip out and go to Hog Wild Records. And that's where my kind of vinyl addiction began. And they were carrying all the cool stuff that I would eventually gravitate towards, which was like the Wax Trax record label catalog and network, and all the British stuff like 4AD, and then learning about Bauhaus in particular, and the Stooges, and kind of this, and then my collective group of friends, we were real into New Order, Depeche Mode, the Smiths, the Cure, like the dark stuff of the Cure, and then Susie and the Banshees, so it's just like this discovery. And at the time, since everything was tactile, you had to go to the record store and you're just basically flipping through the bins and looking at covers and starting to learn like anything with the Mute Records label most likely was going to be really cool.
That's the winner right there. Yeah.
Right. And then that's how, all of a sudden I'm listening to, I like Depeche Mode, but what is this Diamanda Galas stuff and Bad Seeds and the Birthday Party? And again, swinging back to Bauhaus, and then also the Cocteau Twins, Clan of Zymox through that, and then like Ex-Mal Deutschland. So it all kind of like, and then again, all the Wax Trax stuff then started coming up, so that the more electronic sample based stuff. So I was always really into like anything that was like just encompassed by darkness. I mean, it's all like all that stuff overlaps so much to me. So really it was as a music fan, and then I guess fanatic, because I began DJing because I was starting to work in nightclubs. Me and a couple of friends of mine, like in our teenage years, working in sort of like gay underground discos almost of were the first clubs in San Antonio that embraced this sort of new wave of like the dark swarm. Like they were way into like Yaz and Depeche Mode and, like I said, New Order and all the associated. The Cure had lots of club hits, so they were really friendly, and then they were friendly towards us getting into the clubs almost underage, but actually being able to get jobs and eventually get jobs. And eventually I was able to go from being a bar back into getting trained how to DJ by DJ Jesse, one of the legends of the San Antonio turntable.
That's some pedigree there. Yeah.
And so he trained me, and I would just work a little bit on the weekends and then bar back. And then eventually I was convinced the owners of the club to give me a night, or they said they were going to open on a night. So I had to, I got the gig. So then I had to come up with my own theme nights. And out of that, I learned how to market a club night and expand the responsibilities of organizing a weekly event eventually. And then I started just calling Wax Tracks and other record labels, letting them know that there was this DJ me down in Texas playing their shit, and I wanted to put on shows. And so we ultimately landed a show with Skinny Puppy.
Woo!
Yeah, first one.
Okay, so hold on. The first show that you put on as someone running a night was Skinny Puppy.
That's right.
That is impressive.
So I had some, really good friends throughout my life, and so me and my friends, we went in on it, and so yeah, we fucking lost our ass. We were probably terribly unorganized. I know that it sounded really good, but it was like a real huge learning experience. And then I did subsequent Skinny Puppy shows, though, and also out of that is where my connection to, I met Al Jorgensen was kind of the referral that came out of Skinny Puppy camp. That there was, I basically managed to get Al on the phone, and he knew that I'd done the Skinny Puppy show because word was traveling quick that like Texas could be a viable market for these bands that were really still kind of trying to break out.
Yeah.
And so we put on a ministry show, and then that led to a fun hang with Al that got us the Revolting Cocks show. And then in between that, we had My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult once I really made connection with Wax Tracks. And they're like, hey, we got this new band. They only have this one song out, but I had already bought that Shock of 0.6 first cut 12-inch. So I was already in tune with My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult. And so they came down, and like their second show ever, played San Antonio, fucking built them a stage on beer crates and stuff. This was another funny thing at this club I was DJing at, held like 150 people, but we packed it out.
I feel like we could just do an entire show of just the crazy ass shows that you put on.
Oh yeah. And take them one by one. So that led to subsequent TKK shows in San Antonio. And then I helped them book other Texas dates at one period of time, and then ultimately ended up tour managing them on a future tour while also moonlighting as extra vocals and keyboard player for like six years worth of touring, where I eventually became a member of Thrill Kill Cult. So we really helped, I think, establish them in Texas. And then Numbers is another badass nightclub in Houston. So Texas immediately gravitated around like the Chicago, Texas connection with like Al Jorgensen and TKK and the whole Wax Tracks Chicago hub. They loved coming down to Texas to play shows because we threw great events and everybody was fucking nuts and
Well,
crazy.
I mean, and that's
fun.
it right there. Like, it doesn't always even matter on the size of the event as to whether or not people that are there are really receptive.
Yeah, exactly. So just lifelong friendships were developed, and we all were able to kind of build each other up. And for me, that eventually led to just getting out of putting on shows and having my own band, Evil Mothers, and then running with that for a good while. Like we did 4 albums on Martin Adkins' Invisible Records,
Yeah.
which ultimately led me into my participation as a member of Pigface. Even back when after that first Ministry Mind is the Terrible Thing to Taste tour, when we did that in Texas, that was sick. And then that's when I met Martin Adkins at a Mexican restaurant in San Antonio, where I was taking the whole band out. And so we were all sitting there, and then that's when I really had the first time to chat with Martin, and we hit it off really well right from the beginning. So as soon as that tour was over, he called me and he's like, hey, we're going to do this Pigface thing and we want to come back and play. We're doing a show with the Butthole Surfers in Houston, and we want to make San Antonio like our first real show. So that's what happened, and we ended up on stage with them that night. Evil Mothers did, setting oil drums on fire that we were playing. And, because you could do that then. And,
yeah. Back when Einstürzen and Neubauten set the stage in LA on fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, that's been the lifelong participation in Pigface, so to speak.
So I have a lot of questions that come out of that, but the very first one is, how did we get from Sesame Street to Kiss?
I don't know. I mean, there might have been like a stop with the Brady Bunch, Partridge Family, in
there were a couple stops along the way, and then got to Kiss. That was the only one that I was having trouble seeing the through line.
I was probably liking Kiss around the age of 8. Pretty early.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even as a kid, just look like the makeup and clothing alone was enough to make me go, "That's cool."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
you had your own bands, so we talked about Evil Mothers, but what made you ultimately decide to just start doing more solo stuff? Because you don't really have a set band at this point.
That's right. This is a one-man operation, so to speak.
Yeah.
In terms of live performance right now. And that doesn't mean that it'll always be that way, but it began out of a necessity, essentially, because I was ready to do music again, or whatever's coming next. Since Evil Mothers was basically dissolved at that point, and then Pigface was lurking around, but Martin Adkins had been in a car accident, which kept delaying, essentially, in terms of his recovery, really being able to put Pigface out on the road like we normally would. And that kind of kept getting pushed back. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, oh man, time is slipping by. And I was just mainly doing a lot of DJ gigs and remix stuff and video game soundtracks, but I really didn't have a live direction going on, or collective band in the works. So I just really Cold Waves Festival kind of inspired probably the actual existence in some ways of the solo project, because again, out of necessity, I was going to DJ, I think it was 2016, Cold Waves 2016. So I was DJing the after party downstairs at Smart Bar, and my friend Bradley Bills, his project Chant, was also playing. So Bradley and I are really good friends. He played drums in the reincarnation of Evil Mothers, and he's also in Pigface. So I just decided to hitch a ride with him, because he was going to play 6 shows on his way up to Chicago from Austin. So I figured I would just tag along and because I had been singing some songs with him on guest appearances, so to speak. And then I would DJ anyway before his set was kind of the thought. But like kind of maybe a day and a half before we were leaving, I decided I didn't want to DJ because it was just kind of not inspiring me enough.
Okay.
So I just came up with my first iteration of the Curse Mackey live set, which in that case was almost like a improvisational, somewhat remixy set of me reworking some Evil Mother's material. Like I was doing Pig Face Suck, like a real remixed version of that, and also doing just this very esoteric, heavy ambient doom noise set that was very unplanned.
Well, you had
night.
like a day and a half, so
Right.
yeah.
So then out of that, as I began, like, so that was fun because it was scary to do that because it was very spontaneous and it was not backed by a very powerful band, which all the bands that I've been in are loaded with talent, so to speak. And so it's interesting to just go up there by yourself and do it. So I enjoyed that challenge quite a bit. And so we made our way up to Chicago. So I did like 5 or 6 shows and then did the live version downstairs in the basement at Smart Bar during cold waves rather than DJing. And I felt really good about that. Everybody was just gathered around. I did like a floor show. So at that point I felt like, okay, that actually could be something kind of cool. And I continued to do that. And out of the repetition of doing more set shows, these songs started creeping out of the noise. And as I recorded that stuff, that's where tracks like Oh Blasphemy and After You Destruction were first originated. So that's how it all came to pass. So eventually I just molded the noise into more cohesive songs, and that became the direction of Instant Exorcism.
So something you said in there I kind of want to focus on. You went from, like you said, playing these shows with, there's a lot of, you can't discount yourself. You're a great talent in your own right, but you also had other members, Martin Atkins and just all these people in various different projects up on stage with you before. How did you feel like you had to compensate in some way when it was just you, or did you decide, okay, I'm going to try and do something very, very different than what I was doing with these other people on stage?
Right. Yeah, it's mostly the latter, meaning that it's something very different. And it allows me to just explore a little bit more on my own. And again, it challenges my expectations of myself. And then also, I think, will either impress or depress the viewer or listener, based upon how they take my music. So it's just mainly, at the end of the day, it's just a lot of fun to do. And it doesn't take the place of a pig face show or the fun it is to be on stage with Thrill Kill Cult. Like, it's all different, and there's time enough throughout the year for all of these things to exist, really. So I'm just happy that I can do it, and that people are interested, and that on the cusp of putting this new creation out there.
So the fact that it's fun is to me, like, that's so obvious. Like, you're very much having a good time, even in songs that are like angry or depressing. There's this feeling of like that there's a certain amount of joy in the creation of it, though. Like, you're obviously not just slogging this out for the money, because who would do that in industrial music?
I mean, I would. But yeah, exactly. And that's not to say that this shit is hard. It's not, it comes at its own price in time, emotion, personal expectations, self-doubt, and lack of confidence and shit that we all go through, and then just the logistics of taking it all and somehow spreading it out and putting it on a stage and making that show move around the country. It's a high price of admission to the fun. Let's put it that way.
A labor of love, as I like to say.
But I think you can create a lot of reward out of it. And of course, money is nice, and I believe it definitely that ideally the business of this music is self-sustainable and it isn't a hobby because I want to do it.
Right.
I want to be 100 years old making a really twisted industrial psychedelic country album.
I want to go.
Still breaking new ground.
I want to go to the Methuselah Curse Mackey psychedelic dark country show. Wow. All right.
400 years in the making.
Let's go. I you know what? If I have to freeze myself to make it to that, I will. That's fantastic. Right. So
I'll send you I have some powder. I have some powders that'll preserve you.
Oh, excellent. Good, because I need some preserving. I'm wasting away already.
Sprinkling it on.
So, though that does bring up a question that I had for you, because especially on this second album, Immoral Emporium, being able to get an advanced listen to it, it's much more varied than Instant Exorcism. There's a lot. You don't really pick a genre in it. There's obviously there's a lot of electronic backing in there, but there's also flavors of not just industrial but synth pop, post punk. A lot of the things that you were talking about in the beginning. You can sense the Susie and the Banshees and the Dead Kennedys and the Depeche Mode influences all over the place. The question that I have for that, though, is do you find, though, that that's a little bit harder to market? Because you've got, people tend to, of course, there are people like myself who love variety, and there is a place for all of these genres in the dark music scene, but most people tend to focus on, all right, well, I love this band because I really love industrial, and they're super industrial. Do you find that by having so much variation, it makes it a little harder to get people into the album as a whole as opposed to just singles?
I don't know. I mean, really, that's more of a consideration for the person listening, I guess. I see these things with a broad mind, so to speak, just as you were saying, as I'm talking about just the dark scene and how the foundations of the music were so overlapped. I'm not into genre purism, if you will.
Okay.
So, and I think that there's that's a slippery slope, and that is probably why industrial music didn't survive very well in the late 90s after bands like Skinny Puppy, Ministry, Thrill Kill Cold, after that whole wax track scene peaked out, and then wax tracks kind of went down, and then it was just a half a decade of very things that were very repetitive sounding, mostly trying to mimic Skinny Puppy vocals in some ways. So it wasn't, it just kind of ate itself to death. So my point is that I think that for me, I just have a more eclectic look at dark music. So all the elements are there, and I don't need to just pound you over the head for 45 minutes with just throbbing, deep, dark, grinding industrial bass sound, because I could, and I might under a different project name, but for Curse Mackey, and where the tail of this body of work is at, starting with Instant Exorcism, and then just the sort of conceptual ideas behind the record. I think that as an album, it makes a lot of sense, and it has to make sense more as an album and a work of art than trying to fit into a genre box for greater marketing appeal.
Well, you definitely have my vote on that one, because I've been a variety proponent and someone that just really clamors for that my entire DJ career. So,
yeah. As a matter of fact, I mean, really, you're speaking to one of the goals of this record is to like fucking smash genres and broaden what that means so that it's not such a narrow scope. Like, and I don't think it's good for a fan to be just like, if it doesn't fit this little micro sliver of a module, I'm not into it. Like, there's diminishing returns there because there's only so many bands that are going to really excel in any one given sound, even though there may be a shit ton out there that are emulating.
And it's interesting because you might even argue that if those bands that are not succeeding in that one genre, if they did push out and try to experiment further with other genres, they may find a new sound that is all their own that they would actually be better at.
Yeah, but it's all about fun. Like, if everybody's having a good time and being cool, like, it's awesome. I love the fact that people are trying and they're inspired by things that have come before, and then all you hope is that people break new ground somehow within that. Obviously, I'm much the same. I'm inspired by all of the bands that we've been talking about, and I think that also does bleed into my own music. But I try to honor the things that I like, and I do make little subtle Easter egg references throughout my music to things that I'm into for fun, and because I like the collage, montage, sharing, keeping the ideas moving forward, and trying to discover new things along the way.
So that does bring up what might be a difficult question, because all talent aside, the imposter syndrome is a thing. Do you feel that you broke new ground on this record?
Oh, yes.
You do?
Definitely. Yeah.
So how does that feel to to walk away from something and be like, you set out to blend and bend genres and you really feel like you did that? Like, I don't know, does that make you want to go, all right, yes, awesome, I did it? Or does that mean like, all right, now what do I do for the next album?
Well, like, the next album is the third part in theory, like when we're just getting into like sort of the deeper lyrical, conceptual ideas of the art and the music and the body of work. Like, I'm kind of in the mindset of, this was the Two Towers, it's like, it's the second of three. So we'll be entering some interesting terrain for sure, for what comes next. And I like the fact that it's really open-ended as to where that might go. I mean, I'm currently involved in writing the next record as we speak. So
you just don't rest, do you?
Well, you have to get some stuff started because it sometimes takes a while to get them going. Like, so it's not like I have mostly focused on this album release, and then the Zymox tour is coming up. So I have, a tour looming on my head. So it's kind of important to get at least a little bit of a head start. Okay. And just always, and this goes back to like talking about just, all of us making music and having fun with it and trying to make our way through it, however you reap your rewards. I think it's always important just to be writing as much as you can all the time. Because, for instance, on Immoral Emporium, Chase Dobson, my main co-collaborator, he and I worked on like 13 songs together, 10 of which are on the album, right? So kind of have to expect that you may have to do like 30% more work sometimes to get down to just the right feeling of like, okay, these 9 or 10 or 11 songs, this is where it's at. And that's just, looking at the album ahead. So, yeah.
So are you one of those artists then that like has, notebooks of unused lyrics and like several folders in your computer of unused musical riffs that like because you just keep pouring stuff out and it's the stuff that's ready that makes it to the next album, and the stuff that isn't, maybe it'll eventually make it somewhere.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Like you end up, the way I view it, like we probably have 3 B-sides lingering out of the body of work for Immoral Emporium, and then there's a whole bunch of remixes forthcoming, but the 10 songs that are on the album, and then the ones that didn't feel like they fit into that narrative but are still good, they're waiting. And then I was working on some new stuff to try to get 3 or 4 good tracks underway before the tour starts, because then I won't be able to work on music for a little while.
Be too busy playing it.
That's right, which is fun.
Yes.
I'm ready to play.
I bet.
So ready. It's been a while. I mean, I played Mechanismus Fest in Seattle, was really awesome, and had a show at the new Coffin Club in Portland, which I really recommend. So making it around a little bit, but really have just been kind of having to wait for this album to get out, and then the Zymox tour, which is kind of a continuation of our 2020 tour that was canceled midstream, so to speak.
Jeez, why was the tour canceled in 2020 of all years?
Did you hear?
So I want to talk more about the writing process of the album, but that does lead me to you have, like you said, started playing shows, and in your experience so far, is playing shows post-COVID, is that any different than beforehand, or is it just like slipping into an old coat and it feels as good again?
No, I feel that it's still somewhat different because there's still some tenuous environments at times, and people are still fucking getting ill and going home, and tours cancel. So
Right.
There's no safety net currently, in a way, right now, where there used to be. So that's it, I think, from the performer side of things, that like, okay, I've been waiting to go on tour for 2 years. Everything's finally lined up. One, there's still something out there that's much more active than it used to be, right? Where people still have to go home and shit. So I think that makes it different. And then I think, the audience themselves are, I don't know, maybe people haven't totally let loose yet.
Everybody's a little reserved in the crowd then.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. It's just, I think that it's still like it's really like the first quarter of kind of getting back. This year has just still been it's not that established yet, I guess. Right. Some tours survive, some don't. So, which that creates disappointment all around. So,
well, fingers crossed.
I think everybody's like just, a little cautiously very optimistic.
Yeah.
They want to be out there, and some things are doing good. So we just have to continue doing it. It's like fucking no choice.
Well, I mean, like that's just right down. I mean, from what it sounds like, that's exactly how the project began. Is just, have to be doing something, and if we just keep doing something, hopefully it's putting on shows and going to shows, and if not, it's supporting the albums. As long as we are still finding some way to create this environment where art like this can flourish, I think that we're going to be okay.
Yeah. So I'm excited. It's going to be a fun tour. So I hope everybody that's out there can get to it. And otherwise, I'll be hitting the rest of the US in 2023 for sure.
Woo, 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 woo.
So it'll be fun. What's funny is my dog is right by me. She heard you
whooping and hollering. Yeah.
She's all perked up now.
Animals respond better to me than people do. So say what you will about that. So I feel like kind of getting back to the album, I heard you say a couple times like that what fit in, and you mentioned like almost like a trilogy and comparing this to the Two Towers. So would you is there an actual narrative to Immoral Emporium, or is it more of just like thematically everything fits together?
Okay, so without getting too long-winded, the record was kind of goes in, I would say, like there's like three movements, so of 10 songs. This is just, again, in my own mind. The listener may have a totally different experience, but when it
Yeah,
just
but
comes to the
I'm not
lyrical
interviewing the listener.
and the way I've sequenced the songs as it's composed, if you will, it's like three acts, and
Okay.
that's also why there's some shifts that our entire, like, Instant Exorcism is a little bit more of a surrealist uh, sci-fi dystopia that's kind of, leather jackets and glitter and grit and kind of a little Blade Runner-y 1984 with this, religious iconography kind of overhead going on.
Sounds like every goth night in Charlottesville.
There
ever.
you go. Oh, good. And then, or as Immoral Emporium, then it's like everything comes crashing down because like sci-fi is a little bit more real now. Like everything that is in, Minority Reports, almost like you can see happening and you can see where things are going. And then we also had this, great wipeout collectively. So the reality of like how science fiction and speculative fiction and just alternate realities and parallel universes really actually is starting to seep into our own daily existence now through like misinformation, disinformation. Half the country thinks one thing, the other half thinks another, and where they meet in the middle is like where reality and truth are not always connecting, so everything's very fractured. So how are we living, and are we transferring into beyond our human bodies? And so and then how do I or you, like if you're even any type of compassionate soul, you're just like, oh man, how am I going to get through all this, right? And it's like I'm fucked. So it's kind of like that. And
is there an answer in there, or is the album just the question?
I don't want to give away the end.
Okay,
So no spoiler alerts.
No
But,
spoilers.
Like, again, we have to ultimately, at the end of the day, everybody has to power through.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, like whatever you're staring down, that's what you're going to have to deal with. And so, if you want to continue on, then you have to navigate it, and whatever those personal demons, external circumstances beyond your control, whatever. If you'll either just lay there and curl up in a ball and try to disappear, or you go out into the world and make your way despite the challenges. So it's kind of like, I think it ultimately has a lot of dark moments. It's a more vulnerable record in terms of, I think, the lyrical concepts and even maybe musically at times than Instant Exorcism.
Still takes a lot more chances.
Definitely takes more chances. There's still plenty of like club-based music because I like nightclub music and industrial dance music and stuff. So I think that's still represented. And then because it's an album, there are a couple of tracks that are a little deeper and darker and are sound designed maybe for greater listening on headphones and things like that. And maybe stuff that I won't ever necessarily have to play live, but I could if I wanted to. So I think it gives a really a lot of content and interesting shit to think about and listen to in a nice, concise 43 minutes and 43 seconds.
Was that on purpose? Like the 43-43?
It kind of did end up about like that. Yeah. On purpose, on accident.
Just say it's on purpose. Like, they don't have to know.
That's right. That's how it usually works.
So, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
Oh, no, it's your interview. Go for it.
I don't know.
All
I
right.
don't know what I was going to say.
So, we've been talking about it, and we're trying not to spoil it, but we're obviously excited for it. So, for the folks at home watching right now, when's it going to be available? What's the best way to get our hot little hands on Immoral Emporium?
Yes. So, tomorrow is Bandcamp Friday, the first Friday. They've done that in several months, and as many know, but if you don't, it's one of the best days you can buy music for on Bandcamp, which is probably the best online independent music store in existence. They provide a lot of good services for artists, and then on Bandcamp Friday they wipe away their commission. So essentially, the fee that they normally take to cover their operating cost is just passed back to the artist. So, and that can add up. So it's a really cool day. So it's something that I find is a good way to support your favorite artist and take a chance on some new music. So Bandcamp is definitely a great way to do it. And otherwise, just like grabbing it on Spotify or Apple Music. You can even do that. Like you can pre-save that stuff now. That's probably the two best ways. And all the physical product is also available on Bandcamp. So if you just go to cursemackey.com, that can get you to those storefronts essentially. So that would be my recommendation. And then there's vinyl, CDs, t-shirts, paraphernalia.
And that releases September 9th, so a week from tomorrow. Yep.
Yeah, but it's available for pre-order right now. Yep. So that's why tomorrow's a great day to pre-order, again, because of Bandcamp Friday. So if you're going to do it, tomorrow's a great day.
And I highly recommend you do it because, folks, you immediately get a downloadable version of Lacerations, which is an absolutely killer club track, and I promise you will not be disappointed by the rest of the album.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, thank you for making it. I admit that I couldn't really hide my preferences while asking some of these questions, because for me, I feel like an album that goes in so many different directions and does so many different things musically while still keeping an overall thematic whole that makes you feel like you're listening to the same album. That's a jewel. And I don't have a problem with the release of a lot more singles these days. I understand that from keeping your name out and keeping, in a society where there are a million different bands all on the internet, releasing a single a month or something like that's a great idea. I do, as someone that also grew up with, the vinyl records and cassettes, and would just sit in my room and listen to whole albums. It feels like it was made for me. I love it to death.
Awesome. I did make it for you, and I made it for me, but I also made it for like kind of all my friends and all of us, all the friends that I've made or fans, whatever, just the community that I'm fortunate to exist within, kind of like, as you said, getting back into genres or whatever, just the general scenes and all the people that come to the shows and that didn't get to go to shows for a couple of years, really, and the confusion and the chaos and all that. We all went through that collectively, and this album is sort of like, it is a bit of a collective sigh and I don't know, a form of exorcism again, to share in that.
Exorcism?
And it's there. Yes, exactly. And so, that's why it's an album. Like, at the end of the day, I view books, printed material, has lasting historical value. I think things made out of zeros and ones won't ever have as much impact in the world. And once the internet goes down, if all your music's just on a platform that may or may not last 5 years and is owned by a bunch of corporate types that really don't give a fuck about music, then you're shortchanging yourself. You got to invest and like make sure that make at least one print CD or album. You know, like make it last, because I'm so like, when I look back, I'm like, oh, it's so cool. Like these albums from the bands I love, they exist and they're like 30 years old and 40 years old, and people still discover music that was made a long time ago physically, and it can take home your album. I think it's a really cool artifact, so to speak, to document your work.
And
much like writing a book and having it published in a way. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of artifacts, that's a great segue, because not only is the album available on CD and vinyl, but you were showing me before the interview that you've actually got like a little keepsake for some of the packages.
Oh, this little key,
which is just so cool.
The 3D printed key.
Of the band symbol.
Yeah, these keys will soon be available, and they're going to unlock something.
They unlock something.
Can't talk about yet, but
more spoilers.
There's something.
I feel like I'm gonna have to have another interview like 6 months to a year later. Be like, all right, so what did that key unlock? Did I miss it? What was going on? Yeah.
Hopefully we'll talk about it in person before then.
That would be awesome. I'm actually going to my first show on Saturday since the pandemic started. I'm gonna.
Oh wow! What show is that?
Unheard Sirens in Charlottesville. It's a local band. Love them to death. And so finally,
good name.
Yeah, very very excited about that. So I do hope to catch you on one of your tours and actually get to speak with you.
Absolutely. It'll happen.
Oh, yeah. I ain't going anywhere. So, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, all of my friends and neighbors, let's give a virtual round of applause in the chat for Curse Mackey. Thank you very much for joining me on the show tonight.
Absolutely, Pat. Thank you. Thanks for doing what you do.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah. And so, for those of you that are watching live, what's going to happen next is something actually a subculture talk first. As you saw with the intro video at the beginning, Curse was very kind to send me some neat stuff, including video for the first single off of Immoral Emporium, Lacerations. So we're going to watch that next. And for those of you that are... And then afterwards, of course, we'll have the after party. I'm going to play a track off of Immoral Emporium and then create a whole beat match mix out of that. I have no idea what I'm going to play yet. It's going to evolve as it goes while Jasper draws art on stream. But for those of you that are watching on YouTube, guess what? I'm pretty sure Lacerations is on YouTube. So you should watch it.
It is. It's on my channel.
Yeah.
Which is a great one to subscribe to, I've been told.
You've been told by at least
Curse Mackey
people.
TV on YouTube is a good place to keep up with some visual stuff from me. And to everybody in the chat, I have my screen across the room, but I can see your names scrolling by. So thanks everybody for hanging out. I really appreciate it.
Oh, and a reminder from DJ D42 that you can always check out MTV TV because Lacerations is showing on that right now as well. So,
and the show they put on yesterday was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I get to be on MTV TV in a couple of weeks, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, I'll try to catch it.
All right, so we're gonna sign off from the interview and leave you with a video. And this will not be the last time that I have Curse on this show. I don't believe so.
We'll meet again.
But thanks for watching, folks.
Thank you.